From the next day onwards, Yu Jung-hyuk was absorbed in training with the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint kept a serious expression from the moment she heard her clan could be found. Yu Jung-hyuk knew her emotions, but devoted himself to meditation instead of confronting his teacher. Originally, I was going to meet the ancient giant gods in person, but in any case, it wouldn't be bad to leave it to Kim Dokcha. Yu Jung-hyuk would have had to pass through 40 scenarios in order to meet an ancient giant god if he followed his original plan. That guy, I didn't think he would have such a relationship with the underworld. Kim Dokcha really had unknown corners. How the hell did he succeed in charming all those constellations? The constellation, Demon-like Judge of Fire, is laughing. Just look at this archangel. The demon-like Judge of Fire wasn't such a constellation during the second round. She was a strict and lofty archangel full of justice. Yu Jung-hyuk couldn't understand why such an existence was so ruined this time. Are you really thinking about participating in the competition? Yu Jung-hyuk nodded silently at the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint's question. You might die. The competition scenarios are never easy. I am much stronger than I was at this point of time in the last round. It isn't at a level to deal with the teenage masters. Yu Jung-hyuk was well aware of the teenage masters of Miram. One of them was the ice flower goddess whose techniques were sold by the previous merchant who welcomed visitors. There was also a teenage master from the South Palace, a distant relative of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. They would appear when the martial arts competition opened. In addition, the martial arts competition was a commodity, so he had to consider the incarnations of famous constellations participating. Some constellations are looking forward to the martial arts competition. Some constellations are tired of the martial arts competition. Fortunately, the stronger constellations were tired of these scenarios. As a scenario that repeated every year in Miram, there weren't many constellations paying much attention to the martial arts competition. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint read Yu Jung-hyuk's heart and opened her mouth. You have to open Transcendence Stage 2. I've opened it before, so it won't be difficult. It is different from breaking through Stage 1. I will do it somehow. I've already reached Stage 3 in the last round. Stage 3? The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint's eyes shook. The third stage of Transcendence wasn't a step that could be reached with talent alone. It took an enormous amount of time to pass through the third stage. On the other hand, Yu Jung-hyuk couldn't have experienced such a large amount of time in the last round. Yu Jung-hyuk understood his teacher's question and replied, I used a time fault in the dark dimension. A time fault in the dark dimension. It was often called the Cemetery of Miram. There were two types of Miram people who went to that place. In that prison of enormous time, there were those who hit the wall of talent and became crazy, or those who went beyond the wall. Yu Jung-hyuk was the latter. I can't imagine how hard your training was. How many years were you inside there? Around 100 years. Stage 3 in 100 years. No wonder why you're so arrogant. 100 years. It was a long time for ordinary humans, but it wasn't the same for Transcendence. There were many people who lived for 200 or 300 years in this world who couldn't reach Transcendence no matter how much they built up their martial arts. It was a wall that couldn't be overcome by improving the physical body with all types of spiritual medicine. There was a thick wall in Transcendence, yet Yu Jung-hyuk crossed that wall 3 times in 100 years. I will shorten it if I enter the time fault again. It's a crazy idea. Using a time fault will numb the soul. Haven't you seen the martial artists who went mad in the time fault? Don't you know that there's a fine line between insanity and transcendence? In the last round, I couldn't surpass you even after entering the time fault. Of course. 100 years is too early to catch up with me. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint struggled for a moment before saying, In any case, you have reached the third stage. It is better to teach you than an ignorant person. Yu Jinghyuk's expression wasn't very bright despite his teacher's praise. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint felt something fishy and questioned him. Yu Jinghyuk eventually told her the story. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint heard the story and asked if it was absurd. Your spiritual awakening happened while you were exhausted? Well, I don't remember exactly. In the end, he didn't know when he broke through to stage 3. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint's expression wasn't good. Are you confident you can trust your unconscious mind and break through to stage 3 again? That sounds like the pseudo-cult followers of the Ice Flower Goddess. That's why I need you. Please teach me your techniques again. What? Using the same method as before is difficult. It takes too long. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint was stunned by her disciple's shameless words. I don't know if I should help. You've crossed the wall of transcendence, so you know that transcendence is never done in one way. All transcendents have to find their own way to transcend. You can still help. Isn't there the 1,000 streams will gather together school? Translator's letter. An idiom that all things will return to the same point eventually. It means we will have to find one of the many branches. There is no such enlightenment in the world, just as there is no such story. Still, if there are 10,000 branches, can't we catch one of them? I've already found one in the past. Yu Jinghyuk said this and thought he was somehow talking like Kim Dokcha. He didn't originally talk this way. Maybe he was influenced while they were together. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint sighed at her silent disciple. Were you originally so talkative? It won't be easy. You should have seen that from the previous round that the Breaking the Sky swordsmanship wasn't originally for men. Yu Jinghyuk also knew it. That's why it was very difficult to learn the skills of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint in the past. However, this time was different. The problem of gender can be resolved to some extent. What does that mean? The constellation who likes to change sex is snorting. Yu Jinghyuk frowned at the indirect message. Complex emotions and enormous anger rose every time he thought about it, but he had to take advantage of everything he could. It's time to wrap this up. After a while, the astonished Breaking the Sky Sword Saint's mouth dropped open. Yu Jinghyuk took out his sword with a blank expression. You can never tell that guy out there. In the Kim Dokcha Industrial Complex, there are people who doubt your achievements. The story about the swindler Kim Dokcha is spreading in the Kim Dokcha Industrial Complex. I woke up from my nap due to a message in the air. Based on the message, it seemed that a bad rumor was circulating in the industrial complex while I was away. It was natural, since the industrial complex had changed rulers, but the new ruler never showed his face. By the way, Swindler Kim Dokcha? Why did it feel like people who didn't know my face knew me better? Kim Dokcha, what are you doing? Someone kicked me and I got up with a groan. I saw Yu Jinghyuk, whose upper body was bare and covered in sweat. It was probably from the hard training under the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. I was just thinking for a moment. You're being lazy. I have to be lazy now. I'm a patient. It was an excuse, but it was true. I had yet to fully recover from the exile penalty. The recovery was also delayed due to what happened with the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. I was increasing the proficiency of Lamarck Kirin and steadily ingesting story fragments so recovery wouldn't be too late. I looked at the people training hard in the front yard of the place. How about those guys? The sweating Jang Hayoung was sparring against Han Myung-oh. The Breaking the Sky Master was supervising and pointing out any mistakes. That girl has a fair amount of talent. Her strange attribute means she is learning it very quickly. That isn't a girl. He's a man. Sometimes I don't know where your eyes are. What an idiot. He was a man, right? It was like this in the original novel. I was about to speak when Yu Jinghyuk wondered, what is happening with the constellations? I'm thinking. It had already been a week since I received Persephone's message. The constellation Queen of the Darkest Spring is inviting you to the Gourmet Association. In 1 week, The Gourmet Association will be held at Oro Castle. Please decide if you will depart by tonight. An invitation to the Gourmet Association. I expected it to happen someday, but it was earlier than expected. The Gourmet Association. It was a gathering of constellations who loved gourmet food. At first glance, it was like the Constellation Banquet, but reality was completely different. If the Constellation Banquet was official, the Gourmet Association Festival was unofficial, and the intensity of the events that happened was also different. The Constellation Demon-like Judge of Fire is worried about you. Above all, there was no Uriel in the Gourmet Association. The Constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is wondering about your choice. There was no the Great Sage, the Equal of Heaven, no secretive plotter. Was there the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon? I couldn't remember it well. In any case, the atmosphere of the place wasn't as favorable to me as the Constellations Banquet. There was nothing more dangerous in the Starstream than going to a gathering of unstable constellations. Yu Junhyuk read my expression and asked, "Are you frightened?" "No way." I wouldn't have come all the way here if I didn't participate in the Gourmet Association for that reason. I silently watched Han Myung-oh and Jang Hayoung sparring. Han Myung-oh was hit continuously and let out a scream. Yu Junhyuk watched along with me and stated, "It is because of this place." That's right. According to Persephone's message, the Gourmet Association Festival was exactly 1 week later. As it happened, the date was exactly the same as the martial arts competition. It meant I wouldn't be in the first Miram on the day of the martial arts competition scenario. If something happened, go and come back, Kim Dokja.